The Clone Wars raged across 1,000 worlds. From the gleaming towers of Coruscant to the ash-covered battlefields of the Outer Rim, the galaxy had become a machine of endless conflict, grinding fleets, armies, and entire civilizations beneath its weight. Jedi generals led clone legions into battle against seemingly infinite ranks of separatist droids. Senators debated peace while secretly preparing for greater war. Entire star systems changed hands in a matter of weeks, and every hyperspace lane carried stories of destruction. Yet even amid such chaos, there remained one certainty that united both the Republic and the Separatists. They believed they understood the dangers that existed within their galaxy. They believed every threat could be measured, every enemy identified, every battle eventually won. What neither side understood was that beyond the mapped stars, beyond the unknown regions where even the bravest explorers feared to venture, something had begun moving through a darkness older than any Republic chart. Something that did not care about politics, ideology, or conquest. Something that had crossed the void between realities and was now approaching a galaxy far, far away. Far beyond the frontier worlds, where navigational beacons vanished and hyperspace routes dissolved into uncertainty, a Republic reconnaissance vessel drifted through an ocean of stars untouched by civilization. The small corvette had been dispatched to investigate strange sensor readings that had appeared along the edge of explored space. At first, the anomaly seemed insignificant. Strange radiation bursts occasionally emerged from the unknown regions. Ancient stellar phenomena often produced readings that confused navigational systems. Yet this disturbance was different. Every transmission sent back toward Republic space contained inconsistencies that defied explanation. Gravitational waves appeared where no celestial body existed. Energy signatures shifted between known spectrums and entirely unknown frequencies. Most disturbing of all, the anomaly seemed to be growing. The corvette's sensors struggled to maintain a lock as the crew advanced deeper into uncharted territory. Outside the viewport, the stars themselves appeared distorted, stretched into unnatural patterns as if reality were bending around an invisible center. The vessel's astromech units continuously recalculated coordinates, only for the results to change seconds later. Even experienced navigators found themselves unable to explain what they were witnessing. The phenomenon behaved like a hyperspace rupture, yet it existed entirely within normal space. It resembled a wormhole, yet lacked the gravitational characteristics such structures required. Every answer generated new questions. Then the anomaly expanded. Without warning, a sphere of blinding energy erupted across the darkness. Light poured into space with such intensity that sensor arrays overloaded instantly. The corvette's shields flared against a wave of exotic radiation unlike anything recorded in Republic databases. Alarms screamed throughout the vessel as systems struggled to compensate. Crew members were thrown from their stations when gravitational fluctuations swept across the ship. Outside, reality itself seemed to tear open. A wound had appeared in the fabric of existence. It stretched across hundreds of kilometers, a shimmering fracture surrounded by arcs of violet energy and spiraling storms of impossible matter. Colors that should not exist flickered within its depths. Shapes emerged and vanished inside the breach. Entire starfields disappeared behind waves of distortion before reappearing moments later. For several seconds, the Republic vessel simply drifted before the impossible sight. Then something began emerging. At first, the crew assumed they were observing debris. Massive metallic structures tumbled through the rift surrounded by clouds of energy. But as sensors partially recovered, the truth became clear. These were ships. Unknown ships. Dozens of them. Perhaps hundreds. They emerged from the dimensional wound in organized formations, their designs unlike anything found within Republic or Separatist space. Sleek yet alien, advanced yet unfamiliar, the vessels immediately established tactical positions around the growing breach. Their movements displayed precision and coordination that suggested military discipline. Whatever civilization these ships belonged to, they had arrived prepared. The Republic crew transmitted emergency reports back toward civilized space, but many of their messages never arrived. Strange interference saturated local communications. Distortion fields radiated outward from the anomaly, disrupting conventional transmissions. Even hyperspace communications experienced unusual delays. Information flowed slowly, fragmented and incomplete. Inside the command vessel of the newly arrived fleet, another civilization observed the galaxy before them. The Xiliens had crossed into a new universe. For generations beyond counting, their species had mastered technologies capable of manipulating dimensions themselves. Entire worlds had fallen before their schemes. Countless civilizations had been deceived, manipulated, and conquered through superior intelligence and overwhelming power. Yet even they had never expected to discover a reality like this one. Their long-range scans revealed thousands of inhabited systems, trillions of sentient beings, vast governments locked in a galactic civil war, a civilization weakened by division. To the Xiliens, it appeared as an opportunity beyond imagination. But their fleet was not the greatest weapon they had brought. Deep within the largest vessel rested something far more terrifying. Something sleeping. Something waiting. As the hours passed, additional reconnaissance probes spread outward from the anomaly. Information poured into Xilian databases. They learned of the Galactic Republic. They learned of the Separatist Alliance. They learned of Jedi Knights, clone armies, battle droids, and ancient religions centered around an energy field called the Force. Every new discovery strengthened the same conclusion. This galaxy was powerful but divided, strong but vulnerable, perfect. Meanwhile, across the galaxy, the Force itself had begun reacting. On Coruscant, Master Yoda sat in meditation chambers deep within the Jedi Temple when a sudden tremor disturbed his concentration. The sensation was unlike anything he had experienced in centuries. It did not resemble the presence of a Sith Lord. It did not feel like war, suffering, or death. Instead, it felt larger, vast, ancient, hungry. The Force flowed around all living things, connecting every being within an invisible web. Yet this disturbance felt separate from that web, alien, as though something entirely outside the natural order had suddenly appeared within it. Other Jedi experienced similar visions. Masters reported dreams filled with golden storms. Padawans awoke trembling after witnessing enormous shadows moving among the stars. Entire meditation sessions ended in confusion as Force-sensitive individuals sensed a pressure growing beyond the frontier. Even the Jedi Council struggled to interpret what they felt. Elsewhere, Count Dooku sensed it. Darth Sidious sensed it. Neither understood its source. Both immediately recognized danger. As days passed, reports from the unknown regions increased. Republic scouts vanished without explanation. Separatist reconnaissance groups failed to return. Merchant vessels reported unusual energy readings along remote hyperspace routes. Stories spread through fringe systems about mysterious ships appearing beyond known space. Most dismissed the rumors as wartime exaggerations. Then the disappearances began accelerating. Entire patrol groups vanished. Listening posts went silent. Remote stations ceased transmissions altogether. Fear spread faster than information. The Republic dispatched additional fleets to investigate. The Separatists did the same. Both sides assumed their rival had discovered some new weapon. Neither suspected that something far worse had entered the galaxy. Within the heart of the Xilian fleet, preparations continued. Massive containment systems hummed with power. Energy barriers flickered across kilometers of reinforced structures. Entire engineering teams monitored readings from a chamber so heavily fortified that even Xilian personnel rarely approached it. Inside that chamber rested the reason the fleet had crossed dimensions. The ultimate instrument of conquest. The ultimate weapon. Even dormant, its presence generated measurable energy fluctuations. Sensors detected power levels capable of rivaling planetary reactors. Electromagnetic storms formed and dissipated around containment barriers. Every safeguard existed for one purpose: to keep it asleep. For now. Because the Xiliens understood what would happen once it awakened. Entire worlds would burn. Civilizations would collapse. Fleets would vanish beneath storms of destruction. And this new galaxy, already weakened by war, would learn the true meaning of fear. Back on Coruscant, emergency sessions of the Jedi Council were already being organized. Intelligence reports continued arriving from frontier sectors. Each report added another piece to an increasingly disturbing puzzle. Something had entered the galaxy. Something powerful enough to disrupt the Force itself. Something capable of making entire military formations disappear without explanation. No one yet knew the name of the threat approaching. No one understood the scale of the disaster waiting beyond the horizon. But events had already been set in motion. The Clone Wars would continue. The Republic and Separatists would continue fighting. Jedi and Sith would continue their ancient struggle. Yet beyond the edge of known space, a new player had arrived. One that cared nothing for galactic politics, ancient prophecies, or the balance between light and dark. And hidden behind the fleets of the Xiliens, sleeping within a prison of advanced technology and impossible energy, waited for a creature whose arrival would challenge everything the galaxy believed about power. If you've ever wondered what would happen when the Star Wars galaxy faced a threat beyond the Force itself, make sure to like this video, share it with fellow Star Wars fans, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next chapter of this story. Most importantly, drop the name of a character, faction, or universe you'd like to see enter the Star Wars galaxy in a future what-if adventure. Because what is coming next will force Jedi, Sith, Republic, and Separatists alike to confront a nightmare unlike anything they have ever faced. Beyond the unknown regions, the dimensional wound continued to pulse against the darkness of space. The Xilian fleet expanded its operations. Reconnaissance probes pushed deeper into Republic territory. Strategic calculations were finalized. Plans for conquest advanced with ruthless efficiency. And somewhere within the depths of that colossal containment chamber, three massive heads slowly began to stir. The dragon beyond hyperspace had arrived. The first official contact between the Xiliens and the Star Wars galaxy occurred only 11 days after the appearance of the anomaly in the unknown regions. By then, reports of missing patrols and strange vessels had spread through both Republic and Separatist intelligence networks. Neither side possessed enough information to determine whether the newcomers represented a threat, an opportunity, or merely another neutral civilization caught in the expanding chaos of the Clone Wars. What made the situation even more dangerous was the fact that both governments reached the same conclusion simultaneously. If the newcomers could be recruited, influenced, or manipulated before the opposing side established contact, the balance of the entire war could shift overnight. On Coruscant, the Senate was already buzzing with speculation long before the Xilian delegation arrived. Senators crowded committee chambers. Intelligence officers exchanged classified briefings behind sealed doors. Military analysts projected dozens of possible outcomes onto tactical displays. Some argued the newcomers might become valuable allies against the Separatists. Others warned that any civilization capable of crossing unknown dimensional boundaries likely possessed technologies beyond anything currently available within the Republic. Such power could not be trusted blindly. Supreme Chancellor Palpatine, however, appeared calm. From his office overlooking the endless skyline of Galactic City, he studied every report personally. Publicly, he welcomed the possibility of peaceful first contact. Privately, Darth Sidious searched for answers hidden behind the mystery. The dark side whispered warnings he could not fully interpret. Whatever had entered the galaxy existed outside the careful web of manipulation he had spent decades constructing. That alone made it dangerous. Across the galaxy, Count Dooku reached similar conclusions. The Separatist leader reviewed intercepted reports from his fortress on Sereno while battle droid armies continued their campaigns across dozens of systems. Unlike many of his advisors, Dooku did not dismiss the newcomers as another minor power. He sensed significance. The Force itself seemed disturbed whenever he focused upon the unknown regions. Ancient instincts developed through years of Sith training warned him that events larger than the Clone Wars were beginning to unfold. Neither Sith Lord realized how correct that instinct truly was. The Xiliens understood politics almost as well as they understood conquest. Long before their first diplomatic vessels entered Republic space, they had already compiled extensive psychological profiles on major galactic leaders. Republic ideals, Separatist grievances, Jedi philosophy, corporate interests, military structures, economic dependencies. Every weakness was catalogued and analyzed. Every pressure point identified. The strategy was simple. Smile first, conquer later. Their first diplomatic cruiser emerged from hyperspace near Coruscant under a flag of peace. Its design immediately drew attention from observers throughout the capital system. The vessel appeared elegant and advanced without seeming overtly threatening. Smooth metallic surfaces reflected starlight like liquid silver. Energy signatures indicated remarkable technological sophistication while remaining carefully restrained. Everything about the ship had been designed to create a specific impression. Friendly, civilized, trustworthy. The Senate welcomed the visitors with cautious optimism. Within hours, news networks across the Republic were broadcasting images of the newcomers. Citizens fascinated by the unfolding story gathered around holoscreens. Commentators discussed potential trade agreements. Analysts speculated about technological exchanges. For a population exhausted by years of war, the possibility of peaceful contact with an advanced civilization felt almost refreshing. The Xiliens encouraged that perception. Their representatives appeared calm, articulate, and respectful. They spoke of exploration, scientific discovery, and mutual cooperation. They described their journey as the result of an accidental dimensional crossing that had revealed an entirely new galaxy. They expressed admiration for Republic democracy and concern regarding the ongoing war. Most importantly, they offered assistance. Advanced medical technologies, energy systems, navigation breakthroughs, industrial innovations, gifts presented freely, at least on the surface. The Jedi Council attended the diplomatic proceedings with significantly less enthusiasm. Master Yoda sat quietly beside Mace Windu as the lead Xilien ambassador addressed Republic officials. To ordinary observers, the exchange appeared completely normal. The ambassador projected confidence without arrogance. His words were measured and precise. His mannerisms suggested genuine sincerity. Yet something felt wrong. Yoda sensed it immediately. The Force moved strangely around the visitors. Normally, every living being existed within the current of the Force. Even individuals unaware of its existence generated subtle impressions. Emotions created ripples. Intentions left traces. Life itself produced resonance. The Xiliens felt different. Not absent. Not invisible. Different. Their presence resembled shadows cast against flowing water. The Force could perceive them, but not clearly. Every attempt to read deeper encountered strange distortions. Motives blurred. Intentions fragmented. Hidden layers obscured deeper truths. Master Windu noticed it as well. The sensation reminded him of observing someone through fog. Possible, but incomplete. As the diplomatic discussions continued, unease spread among the assembled Jedi. The Xiliens spoke perfectly. Too perfectly. Every answer addressed concerns before they could be raised. Every statement reinforced trust. Every gesture projected harmless cooperation. It was diplomacy executed with almost unnatural precision. Meanwhile, in distant Separatist territory, another Xilien delegation was conducting nearly identical negotiations. Count Dooku received them personally. The discussions followed remarkably similar patterns. Respectful introductions. Offers of cooperation. Expressions of neutrality regarding the Clone Wars. Promises of technological exchange. The Xiliens presented themselves as explorers seeking friendship rather than influence. Dooku listened carefully. Unlike Republic officials, he possessed decades of experience navigating political deception. He recognized skilled manipulation when he encountered it. Yet even he struggled to identify flaws in the Xilien performance. They lied beautifully. Not through obvious falsehoods. Through omission. Every statement remained technically accurate while concealing essential truths. The most dangerous kind of deception. Back on Coruscant, another problem was emerging. Jedi reconnaissance teams investigating the unknown regions had finally reached the edge of Xilien-controlled territory. What they discovered immediately intensified Council concerns. The newcomers were not behaving like peaceful explorers. They were behaving like occupiers. Entire sectors near the anomaly had already been transformed into military operating zones. Massive sensor networks stretched across star systems. Defensive platforms protected strategic locations. Supply fleets moved with military efficiency. Construction projects expanded continuously. Most troubling of all, evidence suggested the Xiliens had arrived with significantly more ships than originally reported. Thousands more. The numbers didn't match diplomatic claims. Explorers did not travel with fleets of that size. Explorers did not establish layered defensive perimeters around dimensional breaches. Explorers did not conceal military assets. Master Obi-Wan Kenobi personally reviewed the reconnaissance reports alongside Anakin Skywalker. Both men reached the same conclusion almost immediately. Something was being hidden. The question was what? As investigations continued, reports from frontier systems became increasingly disturbing. Several independent traders claimed to have witnessed enormous energy fluctuations near Xilian territory. Others described strange electromagnetic storms visible from neighboring sectors. A handful of surviving reconnaissance crews reported detecting power signatures larger than capital ships. Far larger. Unfortunately, none of these reports provided enough evidence to determine their source. The Xiliens ensured that, whenever surveillance approached sensitive locations, sophisticated jamming systems activated. Long-range scans became unreliable. Recon drones vanished. Communications degraded. Every attempt to gather information encountered obstacles. The pattern itself became suspicious. Yet the Republic hesitated. The Separatists hesitated. Neither side wanted to provoke conflict with a potentially superior civilization. And the Xiliens exploited that hesitation masterfully. Weeks passed. Diplomatic ties expanded. Trade discussions began. Scientific exchanges were proposed. Trust slowly developed. Exactly as planned. Within their heavily fortified staging zones, Xilian commanders monitored galactic reactions with satisfaction. Their infiltration strategy was progressing ahead of schedule. Republic leaders viewed them as potential allies. Separatist leaders viewed them as useful partners. Neither side understood the true scale of the danger they faced. Even the Jedi lacked crucial information. They sensed darkness. They sensed deception. But they could not yet identify its source. Deep inside the primary Xilian command vessel, however, the truth remained impossible to ignore. Containment alarms had begun appearing more frequently. Engineers moved continuously through secured corridors. Energy levels fluctuated beyond predicted parameters. Shield generators required constant recalibration. Entire technical teams worked around the clock to reinforce stabilization systems. Because something inside the containment chamber was waking faster than expected. 3 immense shadows moved beneath fields of crackling energy. Power readings increased daily. Atmospheric disturbances formed within the chamber despite the absence of weather systems. Electrical storms erupted across reinforced barriers. The creature's awakening generated enough energy to power entire worlds. Several Xilian scientists privately recommended immediate deployment. Others argued for additional preparation. The debate grew increasingly intense. Their ultimate weapon was becoming restless. Elsewhere, Jedi concerns finally reached a critical point. During a private council session, Master Yoda shared troubling observations gathered through meditation. The visions had become clearer. Golden scales. Endless destruction. Stars burning beneath storms of living lightning. Entire fleets vanishing beneath shadows large enough to eclipse worlds. None of the images made sense. Yet all of them carried the same emotional certainty. Disaster. The Force was warning them. Master Windu agreed. The evidence collected by reconnaissance teams, combined with increasingly disturbing Force impressions, painted a troubling picture. The Xiliens were hiding something significant. Something powerful enough to distort the Force itself. The Council decided action could no longer be delayed. Additional investigations would proceed immediately. Jedi teams would infiltrate regions near the anomaly. Answers would be found. What they discovered might determine the future of the entire galaxy. Because while diplomats exchanged smiles and politicians debated trade agreements, the true purpose behind the Xilien arrival continued advancing toward completion. They had not crossed dimensions seeking friendship. They had not entered the galaxy seeking peace. They had arrived to conquer. And soon, the sleeping king hidden behind their lies would awaken. Far beyond Republic space, inside a containment chamber large enough to house a city, 3 golden eyes opened simultaneously. The energy surge that followed overloaded 17 monitoring stations. For the first time since entering the Star Wars galaxy, King Ghidorah was awake. The warning arrived too late. By the time Republic intelligence intercepted unusual energy readings emerging from Xilien-controlled territory, events were already moving beyond anyone's ability to stop them. Across the Outer Rim, military analysts scrambled to understand a series of impossible sensor anomalies spreading through the mid-rim frontier. Massive electromagnetic disturbances were appearing without explanation. Hyperlane communications flickered unpredictably. Long-range scanners reported energy signatures larger than entire battle groups, only for those readings to disappear moments later. No one yet understood they were witnessing the movement of a living weapon. Far from Coruscant and even farther from the political centers of the Clone Wars, the Separatist fortress world known as Raxus Outpost orbited a dim orange star near several strategically important hyperspace routes. Officially, the facility functioned as a logistics hub supplying nearby droid armies. In reality, it served a far greater purpose. Hidden beneath its armored surface rested one of Count Dooku's most important regional command centers, coordinating hundreds of fleets and millions of battle droids operating throughout surrounding sectors. The station was heavily defended. 3 Lucrehulk-class command ships maintained permanent orbital positions above the world. Numerous munificent frigates patrolled nearby space. Defensive platforms surrounded critical approaches. Tens of thousands of battle droids stood ready to repel invasion. Powerful sensor arrays monitored hyperspace traffic continuously. For years, no Republic assault had seriously threatened the installation. Its destruction was considered virtually impossible. The Xiliens intended to prove otherwise. Inside their flagship, senior commanders observed tactical displays showing the target system. Every defensive platform, every warship, every orbital battery, every military installation had been mapped in extraordinary detail. The Separatists remained completely unaware they had become participants in a demonstration designed for the entire galaxy. The Xiliens had reached a simple conclusion. Diplomacy had served its purpose. Now fear would do the rest. The containment systems surrounding King Ghidorah had become increasingly unstable over the previous days. Energy spikes exceeded projected levels. Several scientists argued the creature could no longer remain dormant indefinitely. Rather than viewing this as a problem, the military leadership recognized an opportunity. The galaxy still doubted them. The Jedi still investigated them. The Republic and Separatists still viewed them as outsiders. That would change today. Within the enormous containment chamber, millions of energy conduits disengaged simultaneously. Layer after layer of suppression fields collapsed. Massive mechanical restraints withdrew into reinforced walls. Warning sirens echoed throughout secured sectors as containment protocols entered final release phases. The chamber shook violently. Then it shook again. The creature inside was stirring. Across countless monitoring screens, technicians watched as one colossal golden head slowly rose above the fading energy barriers. A second followed. Then a third. Each movement generated enough force to register on seismic sensors. Lightning erupted instantly. Not ordinary lightning. Living storms exploded outward from Ghidorah's scales, filling the containment zone with blinding golden flashes. Energy readings surged beyond previously recorded limits. Entire monitoring systems overloaded and failed. The creature spread its wings. The resulting shockwave shattered reinforced observation windows hundreds of meters away. For several moments, even the Xiliens simply stared. No matter how many times they observed King Ghidorah, The sheer scale of the monster remained difficult to comprehend. The three-headed titan resembled a force of nature rather than a living creature. Every movement radiated overwhelming dominance. Every roar seemed capable of shaking worlds. Then the launch sequence began. Massive containment gates opened. Stars became visible beyond the chamber. King Ghidorah looked outward. 3 pairs of burning crimson eyes focused upon an entirely new galaxy. An instinct took over. The creature launched forward. The acceleration alone crippled nearby support craft. Shockwaves rolled through surrounding space as the enormous titan burst from its confinement. Golden lightning spread across the darkness between stars. Long-range sensors throughout the sector immediately detected the event. Most operators assumed their equipment had malfunctioned. No vessel should generate that much energy. No life form should exist at that scale. Yet the readings continued growing stronger. Raxus Outpost detected the anomaly 27 minutes later. At first, Separatist commanders believed they were observing an incoming fleet. Sensor returns showed something moving toward the system at impossible speed. Energy levels exceeded anything previously encountered. Emergency alerts spread through military channels. Defense stations activated. Warships entered combat readiness. Still, no one understood what approached them. Then visual confirmation arrived. Silence filled the command center. The images made no sense. A creature. A living creature. Moving through space. 3 heads. Golden scales. Wings larger than capital ships. The officers stared at the screens in disbelief. Some thought it was a Republic superweapon. Others suspected a sensor malfunction. A few simply stood frozen. Because deep within their instincts, they recognized something terrifying. This thing was not supposed to exist. King Ghidorah entered the system minutes later. The arrival was catastrophic. Electromagnetic storms erupted across local space before the Titan even reached the defensive perimeter. Communications networks failed instantly. Sensor arrays overloaded. Navigation systems malfunctioned. Countless droid units shut down as power surges swept through military infrastructure. Then Ghidorah roared. The sound could not technically travel through vacuum. Yet every ship in the system heard it. Every organic being felt it. Every living creature experienced the same overwhelming sensation. Ancient. Primal. Absolute. The first Separatist attack commenced moments later. Hundreds of vulture droids launched from nearby carriers. Escort frigates opened fire. Defensive batteries unleashed torrents of turbolaser energy. Thousands of weapons converged. Upon the incoming target, the bombardment would have annihilated fleets. King Ghidorah barely noticed. Turbolaser impacts exploded across golden scales with little visible effect. Heavy energy cannons left scorch marks that disappeared almost immediately. Missile strikes vanished beneath storms of crackling electricity. The Titan continued forward. Unstoppable. Then the retaliation began. 3 heads rose simultaneously. Golden energy gathered inside massive jaws. The resulting attack transformed the battle. Gravity beams erupted across space like divine punishment. Brilliant streams of destructive energy tore through the darkness with impossible precision. A munificent frigate vanished instantly as one beam sliced through its central hull. Another warship exploded seconds later. A third split apart beneath concentrated bombardment. Entire capital ships died in moments. Panic spread throughout Separatist formations. Commanders attempted tactical withdrawals. Others ordered concentrated fire. None of it mattered. King Ghidorah moved directly into the fleet. What followed resembled extermination more than combat. The Titan's wings generated energy storms powerful enough to disable nearby vessels. Lightning cascaded between warships. Communications collapsed entirely. Defensive formations disintegrated beneath relentless assault. Gravity beams carved paths of destruction through clustered fleets. One Lucrehulk command ship attempted to ram the creature. The decision proved fatal. Ghidorah seized the massive vessel with enormous claws before physically tearing sections of its structure apart. Internal detonations followed. Thousands of battle droids and crew vanished alongside one of the Separatists' largest warships. The battle had lasted less than 20 minutes. Already the outcome was obvious. Raxus Outpost could not survive. Throughout nearby sectors, emergency transmissions spread rapidly. Fragmented sensor recordings escaped before communication networks completely failed. Military observers watched in horror as entire fleets disappeared beneath storms of golden destruction. The Republic received the footage. So did the Jedi. So did Count Dooku. For perhaps the first time since the Clone Wars began, genuine shock spread across every major government simultaneously. Nobody possessed a frame of reference for what they were seeing. This was not a fleet. Not a superweapon. Not an army. It was a monster capable of destroying fleets by itself. On Coruscant, Anakin Skywalker watched the incoming reports beside Obi-Wan. The recordings showed warships exploding like toys. Entire formations vanished beneath concentrated energy attacks. Sensor analysts struggled to calculate the creature's dimensions because no existing models could process something so large. Anakin felt a chill run through him. Not fear. Recognition. The same feeling he experienced when confronting truly dangerous enemies. This thing was different. Even through recordings, he sensed it. The Force itself seemed disturbed. Obi-Wan reached a similar conclusion. This changes everything, he quietly admitted. Elsewhere, Count Dooku watched the destruction of Raxus Outpost unfold in real time. For once, the Sith Lord found himself speechless. Entire fleets were being erased. Defenses carefully constructed over years vanished within minutes. The creature did not merely possess power. It embodied it. And worst of all, Dooku immediately understood what the attack represented. A message. The Xiliens had deliberately chosen a separatist target. Not because they opposed the Confederacy. Because they wanted everyone watching. Republic. Separatists. All would witness the same lesson. Resistance was futile. Back at the battle itself, the final phase had begun. King Ghidorah descended toward the planetary surface. Defensive cannons fired desperately. Shield generators activated. Millions of battle droids mobilized. The effort achieved nothing. Golden lightning cascaded across entire continents. Military complexes vanished beneath waves of destruction. Cities burned. Orbital elevators collapsed. Industrial zones exploded in chain reactions visible from orbit. The planet shook beneath the assault. Within hours, Raxus Outpost ceased functioning as a military installation. Its fleets were gone. Its defenses destroyed. Its command structure annihilated. One of the Separatists' strongest regional strongholds had effectively been erased from the war. And King Ghidorah was barely injured. Far away, aboard hidden observation vessels, Xilian commanders watched the devastation with satisfaction. The demonstration had exceeded expectations. Sensor networks across the galaxy had recorded every moment. Fear was spreading exactly as intended. Soon governments would understand. Soon leaders would panic. Soon worlds would begin seeking protection. And when that happened, the Xiliens would offer exactly what everyone desired. Security. Order. Survival. At a price. Yet even as they celebrated, several commanders noticed something troubling. King Ghidorah was not returning. The creature had completed its mission. It should have obeyed recall directives. Instead, it remained above the ruined world. 3 heads scanning the stars. 3 pairs of crimson eyes focused upon distant horizons. Almost as if the Titan had discovered something interesting. Something calling to it. Unknown to the Xiliens, unknown to the Republic, and unknown even to the Sith, the destruction of Raxus Outpost had created consequences none of them anticipated. Because the Force had felt the attack. Across the galaxy, ancient vergences stirred. Dark side nexuses awakened. Powerful Force-sensitive beings experienced visions. And somewhere deep within the hidden chambers of Coruscant, Darth Sidious finally realized the terrifying truth. The Xiliens had not brought a weapon into the galaxy. They had unleashed a catastrophe. And the catastrophe was no longer fully under their control. The destruction of Raxus Outpost changed the Clone Wars overnight. For nearly 3 years, The galaxy had grown accustomed to conflict on a scale never before witnessed. Entire sectors burned. Republic and Separatist fleets clashed across thousands of star systems. Jedi generals led clone armies into battles that consumed worlds. Yet despite the unimaginable scope of the war, every participant still operated within familiar boundaries. Fleets fought fleets. Armies fought armies. Political leaders manipulated events from behind secure walls. Even the Sith carefully guided the conflict according to long-established plans. King Ghidorah shattered those assumptions in a single afternoon. The footage spread faster than military sensors could contain it. Across Republic space, citizens gathered around holonet broadcasts replaying the destruction repeatedly. In crowded marketplaces on Coruscant, millions watched giant screens displaying the impossible creature tearing apart Separatist warships. On distant agricultural colonies, farmers paused their work to witness fleets vanishing beneath golden storms. Refugees fleeing war zones suddenly found themselves discussing a new terror entirely. The Clone Wars were no longer the galaxy's greatest fear. A monster had arrived. And nobody knew how to stop it. The Jedi Temple became one of the first places where the true implications were understood. Deep within the council chambers overlooking Coruscant's endless cityscape, the galaxy's most powerful Jedi Masters gathered in emergency session. The atmosphere felt heavier than it had during even the darkest moments of the war. Ancient Force traditions offered little guidance for confronting a creature capable of annihilating battle fleets alone. Master Yoda remained silent for much of the discussion. His eyes stayed closed as he listened to intelligence reports, military assessments, and eyewitness testimony collected from surviving reconnaissance vessels. Every new piece of information reinforced the same troubling conclusion. King Ghidorah was unlike anything the Jedi had ever encountered. The Force flowed through every living being. Some were stronger than others. Some could manipulate its currents. Some became great heroes or terrible tyrants. Yet Ghidorah felt fundamentally different. The creature's presence distorted surrounding energy fields in ways no Jedi could fully explain. It did not resemble a Sith Lord. It did not resemble a Force-sensitive predator. It felt closer to a natural disaster given life. And that frightened even the wisest masters. Mace Windu stood beside a holographic projection displaying the battle over Raxus Outpost. The recording looped continuously. Warships exploded. Defensive formations collapsed. Entire fleets vanished beneath streams of golden destruction. This was not a military operation, Windu finally said. This was a demonstration. The statement hung heavily in the chamber. Everyone knew he was correct. The Xiliens had not chosen the target for strategic reasons alone. They had selected a highly visible separatist fortress specifically because they wanted the entire galaxy to witness its destruction. Fear was spreading exactly as intended. Master Pilo Kun studied the footage carefully. The creature is powerful, he admitted. But power alone does not concern me. What concerns me is the intelligence behind its deployment. Several council members nodded. The Xiliens were proving almost as dangerous as the monster itself. While governments focused on Ghidorah, Xilian diplomatic missions continued expanding throughout Republic and Separatist space. New embassies appeared on neutral worlds. Trade agreements multiplied. Humanitarian aid shipments arrived in struggling systems. Publicly, they condemned the attack on Raxus Outpost and expressed concern regarding the unfortunate loss of life. Privately, they celebrated. Fear made populations desperate. Desperate populations accepted protection. And the Xiliens were positioning themselves as protectors. Elsewhere on Coruscant, Chancellor Palpatine watched events unfold from behind his carefully crafted mask of concern. Few individuals understood opportunity better than Darth Sidious. The appearance of King Ghidorah represented a threat unlike anything he had anticipated. Yet it also offered possibilities. Every crisis strengthened centralized authority. Every fear pushed worlds closer toward accepting stronger government control. Every emergency accelerated the erosion of democratic resistance. The Clone Wars had already accomplished much of that work. Ghidorah might complete it. Palpatine reviewed classified reports deep into the night. Military projections estimated that a single appearance by the creature could destroy multiple sector fleets before organized resistance became possible. Planetary defense networks were unlikely to fare much better. Existing Republic strategies simply were not designed for threats of this nature, which meant new powers would be required. Emergency powers, military expansion, increased centralization. The galaxy would demand protection, and Palpatine intended to provide it. Yet beneath those political calculations, Darth Sidious recognized another possibility: control. The Sith had spent millennia seeking ultimate power. Ancient dark side rituals had enslaved monsters before. Sith alchemists had bent impossible creatures to their will. If King Ghidorah could somehow be dominated, the resulting weapon would surpass even his most ambitious plans. The thought fascinated him. Not because it seemed easy, because it seemed difficult. Meanwhile, Count Dooku reached remarkably similar conclusions from the opposite side of the war. Within his fortress on Sereno, the Sith Lord analyzed every available recording of the attack. The destruction itself concerned him less than the implications behind it. The Xiliens had demonstrated power capable of destabilizing the carefully balanced conflict between Republic and Separatists. That balance mattered, because the Clone Wars were never meant to end this way. Sidious had designed the conflict as a pathway toward galactic domination. Ghidorah introduced chaos neither Sith Lord controlled. That alone made the creature dangerous. Yet Dooku also recognized potential. If the monster could be directed against Republic infrastructure, entire sectors might collapse. Core world defenses could be shattered. Political resistance could evaporate overnight. The challenge lay in ownership. The Xiliens controlled Ghidorah. Or at least they claimed to. Dooku was beginning to suspect otherwise, because intelligence reports revealed a troubling pattern. Since the destruction of Raxus Outpost, the creature had ignored multiple recall directives. It moved unpredictably through remote regions. It attacked targets without direct authorization. Several Xilien monitoring stations had even been destroyed after attempting to track its movements too aggressively. Their ultimate weapon was becoming increasingly independent. That realization spread through Xilien command structures as well. Initially, senior leaders dismissed concerns. Ghidorah had always been difficult to control. The creature's destructive instincts often exceeded projected parameters. Such behavior was expected. But as days passed, reports grew harder to ignore. Entire observation platforms vanished. Containment protocols failed repeatedly. Long-range tracking systems recorded deviations from assigned routes. The monster was no longer behaving according to mission parameters. For the first time since arriving in the Star Wars galaxy, genuine anxiety emerged among Xilien leadership. They had intended to conquer a galaxy. Instead, they might have unleashed something they could not contain. Across the galaxy, military planners raced to develop countermeasures. Republic scientists proposed experimental superweapons. Separatist engineers designed specialized fleet formations. Corporate alliance research divisions examined energy absorption technologies. Everyone searched for answers. None found satisfactory ones. King Ghidorah simply operated on a scale beyond conventional warfare. Even advanced warships struggled to damage him. Planetary defenses barely slowed him. And worse still, every appearance generated widespread panic. The psychological impact alone was devastating. Trade routes collapsed. Insurance rates skyrocketed. Frontier colonies reported mass evacuations. Rumors spread faster than facts. Some believed Ghidorah was an ancient Sith creation. Others claimed he represented divine punishment. A few even began worshipping the creature as a living god. Fear reshaped society, exactly as the Xiliens intended. Yet the Jedi sensed something else developing beneath the chaos. The Force itself was changing. Meditation sessions across the Order produced increasingly disturbing visions. Younglings experienced nightmares. Experienced masters struggled to interpret fragmented glimpses of future events. Ancient Force vergences became unusually active. Dark side nexuses intensified. Something about Ghidorah's presence was affecting the galaxy on a deeper level. The creature was not merely destroying worlds. It was altering the spiritual landscape around it. Anakin Skywalker felt those disturbances more strongly than most. The Chosen One spent long hours reviewing combat footage alongside intelligence data. Unlike many Jedi, he focused less on political implications and more on practical realities. How do you stop something like this? The question consumed him. Because every solution seemed inadequate. Fleet bombardment had failed. Planetary defenses had failed. Conventional tactics were meaningless. For perhaps the first time in years, Anakin confronted an enemy that brute strength alone might not overcome. That realization frustrated him. It also motivated him. Elsewhere, Obi-Wan pursued a different line of investigation. The Jedi Master remained convinced the true threat lay not with Ghidorah but with the Xiliens. Monsters could destroy worlds. Manipulators could destroy civilizations. The Xiliens were expanding rapidly. Their influence grew daily. Governments trusted them. Populations welcomed them. Trade networks depended upon them. All while critical questions remained unanswered. Why had they really come? What did they actually want? And perhaps most importantly, how much control did they still possess over their so-called ultimate weapon? The answers remained hidden. For now. Far beyond the major trade routes, King Ghidorah drifted through deep space. Entire nebulae reflected across golden scales as the Titan moved silently between stars. No Xilien vessels accompanied him. No control systems guided him. No fleet escorted him. For the first time since entering the Star Wars galaxy, the creature was completely alone. 3 massive heads scanned the darkness. Searching. Sensing. Waiting. Something in this galaxy intrigued him. Something ancient. Something powerful. The Force touched every corner of existence, and although Ghidorah did not understand it, he felt its presence. Vast currents of energy flowed between stars. Ancient concentrations gathered around certain worlds. Hidden nexuses called to him from unimaginable distances. Predatory instincts awakened. Because King Ghidorah had not entered a galaxy devoid of rivals. He had entered a galaxy filled with power. And somewhere among the stars, powers older than civilizations were beginning to notice him in return. The monster war had only just begun. The Clone Wars had taught the galaxy many lessons about survival. Governments learned how quickly entire sectors could fall. Military commanders learned that technological superiority did not guarantee victory. Civilians learned that safety was often an illusion measured only by distance from the nearest battlefield. Yet despite years of brutal conflict, the war still followed certain predictable rules. Front lines shifted. Fleets maneuvered. Armies occupied territory. Even the worst atrocities remained tied to strategic objectives. King Ghidorah obeyed no such rules. Within weeks of the destruction of Raxus Outpost, the creature had become something far more dangerous than a weapon. It had become an unpredictable force moving through the galaxy according to instincts nobody fully understood. Systems that possessed no military value suddenly found themselves threatened. Trade routes once considered secure became corridors of terror. Entire populations lived under the constant fear that the next hyperspace emergence might reveal 3 golden heads descending from the heavens. The galaxy was no longer fighting a war. It was enduring a hunt. The first major sign of this change emerged in Hutt space. For centuries, the Hutts had survived every galactic conflict through a simple philosophy. Empires rose and fell. Republics expanded and collapsed. Sith and Jedi fought endless wars. The Hutts endured because they adapted. Crime syndicates thrived in the shadows of political instability, and the Clone Wars had created unprecedented opportunities for profit. Smuggling networks expanded. Black markets flourished. Weapons contracts multiplied. Then King Ghidorah arrived near one of their most profitable trade corridors. The event began when a convoy carrying spice shipments disappeared without explanation. Such losses were not unusual. Pirates operated throughout the region. Rival syndicates often targeted valuable cargo. Initially, nobody paid much attention. Then a second convoy vanished. Then a third. By the time investigators reached the area, All they found were drifting wreckage fields and sensor recordings showing impossible energy storms tearing through space. Within days, panic spread throughout Hutt-controlled territories. Merchants refused certain routes. Captains abandoned profitable contracts. Entire criminal enterprises shut down operations near the affected systems. For the Hutts, fear represented lost credits. Lost credits demanded action. On Nal Huda, powerful crime lords gathered to discuss the growing crisis. Massive holographic projections displayed recent sightings. Trade losses climbed daily. Insurance costs skyrocketed. Smuggling routes collapsed. Entire sectors of the criminal economy faced disruption. For perhaps the first time in generations, the Hutts confronted a problem they could not bribe, threaten, or manipulate. They needed hunters. The bounty hunters of the galaxy rarely agreed on anything. Greed united them more effectively than ideology ever could. Some hunted criminals. Others hunted politicians. A few specialized in tracking creatures considered impossible to kill. Yet when word spread that enormous rewards awaited anyone capable of locating or eliminating the golden monster terrorizing trade routes, interest exploded across the underworld. The challenge appealed to their pride as much as their wallets. No bounty hunter wanted to admit a target existed beyond their capabilities. Some quickly learned otherwise. Several independent tracking teams vanished entirely during their investigations. Others survived only long enough to transmit fragmented reports describing storms of living lightning and shadows larger than capital ships. One particularly experienced hunter managed to approach within visual range before retreating. His report circulated throughout the guild within hours. It consisted of a single sentence. "Do not take this contract." Predictably, many hunters interpreted that warning as a challenge. Among those paying attention was Cad Bane. The infamous Duros bounty hunter reviewed available intelligence with characteristic skepticism. Unlike many competitors, he did not underestimate dangerous prey. Survival had taught him the value of caution. Every report pointed toward the same conclusion. King Ghidorah was not a target. King Ghidorah was a disaster. Bane declined the contract immediately. Others were not so wise. Meanwhile, another group watched events unfold with growing concern. The Mandalorians understood monsters. Their history was filled with battles against impossible enemies. Ancient crusaders had fought Jedi, Sith, massive beasts, and entire civilizations. Mandalorian culture respected strength above nearly everything else. Dangerous opponents were not feared. They were tested. News of Ghidorah's destruction spread rapidly through Mandalorian space. Warriors exchanged stories. Clan leaders analyzed combat footage. Veterans studied recordings of fleets being annihilated. The reactions varied. Some viewed the creature as a threat requiring elimination. Others saw an opportunity for glory. A few considered it both. On Mandalore itself, political divisions complicated matters further. The world remained deeply fractured by years of conflict. Traditional warriors and reformists continued struggling over the future of their people. Yet even among bitter rivals, agreement emerged regarding one fact. If Ghidorah entered Mandalorian territory, everyone would suffer. Preparation began immediately. Clan armories reopened. Old warships returned to service. Experienced commanders updated defensive plans. The Mandalorians had no illusions regarding the challenge ahead. They understood the difference between courage and stupidity. Charging directly at a creature capable of destroying fleets would accomplish little. If battle became necessary, it would require strategy. Across the galaxy, the Jedi observed these developments with increasing unease. Master Obi-Wan Kenobi spent much of his time investigating systems recently affected by Ghidorah's movements. Everywhere he traveled, the pattern remained consistent. Fear followed in the creature's wake. Economies weakened. Political tensions intensified. Communities became more vulnerable to manipulation. The Xiliens benefited from every consequence. Their aid programs expanded continuously. Their diplomatic influence increased. Their representatives appeared wherever stability collapsed. Officially, they condemned the destruction. Unofficially, they exploited it. The connection became impossible to ignore. Yet proving their involvement remained difficult. The Xiliens maintained plausible deniability with remarkable skill. They expressed concern, offered assistance, shared intelligence, presented themselves as partners rather than instigators. Many governments accepted the performance. The Jedi did not. Master Yoda's visions had become increasingly troubling. Meditation revealed flashes of future possibilities. Burning worlds, fallen fleets, expanding shadows stretching across the stars. Most disturbing of all, the Force repeatedly showed the same image. Not Ghidorah. The Xiliens. The monster represented destruction. The Xiliens represented intention. One could not exist without the other. Far away, Count Dooku pursued his own investigations. The Sith Lord had quietly deployed intelligence assets throughout regions affected by Ghidorah's movements. Unlike Republic officials, he focused less on military responses and more on behavioral analysis. Why did the creature choose certain targets? What patterns guided its actions? The answers disturbed him, because increasingly, there appeared to be no pattern at all. King Ghidorah was becoming less predictable. The attacks no longer aligned with strategic objectives. Some military facilities were ignored entirely. Neutral worlds occasionally attracted attention. Civilian shipping routes became frequent targets. The creature moved according to instincts rather than orders. Dooku recognized the implications immediately. The Xiliens were losing control. Perhaps they already had. Within Xilian command circles, that fear was growing harder to suppress. Repeated attempts to redirect Ghidorah produced inconsistent results. Tracking systems failed. Communication technologies proved ineffective. Several control platforms had been destroyed when they ventured too close. The truth remained hidden from the wider galaxy. But internally, panic was beginning to spread. Their greatest weapon was becoming their greatest liability. Then matters became significantly worse. The attack on Vontar Station lasted less than 12 minutes. The facility occupied a strategically important position within a neutral system frequented by traders, smugglers, and independent shipping companies. It possessed no military significance, no major fleet bases, no secret weapons programs. Its destruction served no obvious purpose, which made it terrifying. Survivors described the arrival as a living storm. Golden lightning appeared first, spreading across local space like cracks in reality itself. Communications failed instantly. Sensors overloaded. Moments later, King Ghidorah emerged from hyperspace. The station never stood a chance. Orbital structures shattered beneath concentrated energy attacks. Docked freighters exploded. Habitation rings collapsed. Thousands died before evacuation procedures could begin. By the time nearby forces arrived, only debris remained. The message was unmistakable. No system was safe. Military value no longer mattered. Strategic importance no longer mattered. Anyone could become a target. News of the attack spread across the galaxy with unprecedented speed. Financial markets reacted immediately. Trade organizations suspended operations. Neutral systems demanded additional protection. Refugee traffic surged dramatically. Fear was becoming systemic. Exactly the kind of instability capable of reshaping civilizations. Palpatine watched these developments carefully. Publicly, he expressed sympathy for the victims and renewed calls for greater security cooperation. Privately, Darth Sidious saw opportunities emerging from the chaos. Worlds wanted protection. Citizens demanded action. Governments accepted stronger authority. Every crisis moved events closer toward the future he envisioned. Yet even he remained wary. Because despite all his plans, he still lacked answers regarding Ghidorah itself. And uncertainty was something Sith Lords disliked. Far beyond the major trade routes, those uncertainties continued growing. King Ghidorah drifted near the edge of a dense nebula illuminated by distant stars. The colossal titan seemed almost peaceful as golden scales reflected swirling clouds of cosmic gas. Almost. Then one of the creature's heads turned. Moments later, the others followed. Something had captured its attention. Not a fleet. Not a planet. Something else. Something powerful. Something ancient. Far away, hidden within a forgotten corner of the galaxy, an immense dark side nexus pulsed beneath the surface of an abandoned Sith world. Energies dormant for centuries stirred unexpectedly. Ancient ruins trembled. Forgotten temples awakened. The Force itself seemed to react. And for reasons nobody yet understood, King Ghidorah had begun moving directly toward it. The galaxy feared the monster. Soon, the monster would discover that some things hidden among the stars were capable of fearing nothing at all. The Sith had always believed that every force in the galaxy could be controlled. Fear could be controlled. Governments could be controlled. Armies could be controlled. Entire civilizations could be manipulated through carefully applied pressure, deception, and power. For thousands of years, Sith philosophy had revolved around a simple principle: the strong imposed their will upon reality, while the weak submitted to it. Darth Sidious had built his entire rise upon that belief. He had manipulated the Galactic Republic without its knowledge. He had orchestrated the clone wars from both sides simultaneously. He had turned heroes into pawns and transformed institutions into weapons. Every move had advanced his vision of ultimate domination. Yet now, for the first time in decades, something existed outside his control. King Ghidorah. The monster's growing influence disturbed him in ways few beings ever had. The creature ignored politics. It cared nothing for ideology. It could not be bribed, persuaded, intimidated, or corrupted through conventional means. Entire fleets that would have terrified planetary governments meant nothing to it. Every report reaching Coruscant reinforced the same unsettling truth. The galaxy feared Ghidorah more than it feared the war. More importantly, many systems were beginning to fear Ghidorah more than they feared the Republic. That was unacceptable. Fear belonged to the Sith. Fear was the foundation upon which empires were built. Sidious would not allow another force to claim ownership of it. Deep beneath the Senate district, hidden within chambers known only to a handful of individuals, the Dark Lord reviewed classified intelligence gathered over weeks of covert investigation. The information came from spies embedded within Xilian diplomatic circles, intercepted transmissions, stolen technical data, and observations collected by agents who would never know whom they truly served. Individually, the reports revealed little. Together, they painted a fascinating picture. The Xiliens were lying. Not about their arrival. Not about their intentions. About their control. Every fragment of intelligence suggested growing instability within Xilian command structures. Increased security protocols. Emergency technical deployments. Restricted communications. Internal disagreements. Entire research divisions operating around the clock. The pattern was unmistakable. Something had gone wrong. And Sidious suspected he knew exactly what it was. King Ghidorah was no longer obeying. The realization filled him with equal parts concern and excitement. Concern, because an uncontrolled force of that magnitude threatened every plan he had spent decades constructing. Excitement, because weakness created opportunity. If the Xiliens could not control their own weapon, perhaps someone else could. Someone stronger. Someone who truly understood power. The operation began within hours. Officially, it did not exist. Republic intelligence remained unaware. The Jedi knew nothing. Even Count Dooku, who possessed access to many of Sidious's secrets, received no information regarding the mission. This was personal. The Dark Lord selected his agents carefully. Elite operatives from the deepest layers of his hidden network assembled aboard an unmarked stealth vessel departing Coruscant under false credentials. Intelligence specialists. Saboteurs. Cybernetic infiltration experts. Several dark side adepts trained specifically for covert operations. Their objective was deceptively simple: steal the Xiliens' control technology. If such technology existed, the vessel vanished into hyperspace. Weeks earlier, the mission might have been impossible. Xilian security remained formidable. Their military zones were heavily defended. Their intelligence services monitored most approaches. Now, however, conditions had changed. Ghidorah's growing unpredictability was forcing them to divert resources. Entire fleets had been reassigned. Security priorities shifted constantly. Personnel operated under immense pressure. Mistakes became more common. The Sith intended to exploit every one of them. Meanwhile, elsewhere in the galaxy, the consequences of Ghidorah's rampage continued spreading. Trade networks were collapsing faster than economists could model. Several neutral sectors had effectively isolated themselves from wider galactic affairs. Refugee movements reached unprecedented levels. Entire populations abandoned frontier systems whenever rumors emerged regarding possible sightings. The creature rarely remained in one location for long. That uncertainty amplified the fear. Every hyperspace route felt vulnerable. Every distant sensor reading generated panic. Every unexplained storm triggered evacuation protocols. The Xiliens publicly condemned these developments. Privately, they were struggling to contain a crisis. Inside their primary command complex near the dimensional anomaly, senior leadership held emergency meetings almost continuously. Arguments erupted between military commanders and scientific advisors. Security officials demanded greater restrictions. Research divisions proposed increasingly desperate solutions. None addressed the fundamental problem. King Ghidorah was evolving. Not physically. Behaviorally. The creature had begun demonstrating independent decision-making beyond projected parameters. Targets were selected without strategic justification. Movement patterns became impossible to predict. Several encounters suggested Ghidorah was actively avoiding monitoring systems. The implications terrified them, because if their weapon had truly become autonomous, then decades of planning might collapse overnight. And worse still, there were signs the creature was becoming interested in the Force. The observation data remained incomplete, but certain patterns were difficult to dismiss. Ghidorah repeatedly altered course near worlds possessing unusually strong Force nexuses. Ancient Sith locations attracted attention. Powerful vergences generated measurable responses. The monster appeared drawn toward concentrations of energy, toward power, toward significance. No one understood why. Far away on Coruscant, the Jedi Council was beginning to reach similar conclusions through entirely different methods. Master Yoda's visions had intensified dramatically. Meditation no longer revealed isolated fragments. The images arrived with increasing clarity. Ancient ruins, golden storms, dark side worlds illuminated by unnatural lightning. Entire systems trembling beneath converging powers. The Force was warning them. Something larger was approaching. Something beyond simple destruction. The Council authorized expanded investigations immediately. Obi-Wan Kenobi led one team. Anakin Skywalker led another. Both were tasked with tracing Ghidorah's movements and identifying emerging patterns. The assignments placed them far from Coruscant and even farther from the political maneuvering surrounding the crisis. Neither realized how close they were moving toward a collision course with events already unfolding. Because Sidious's covert operation was succeeding. The infiltration team reached the outskirts of a Xilian logistics facility hidden within a sparsely populated system. The installation appeared unremarkable from orbit. Supply depots, communications arrays, research laboratories. A secondary facility. Not a major command center. Precisely the sort of location where important technology might be stored without attracting excessive attention. The operatives inserted under cover of a manufactured sensor malfunction. Within hours, they were inside. The mission quickly exceeded expectations. The Xiliens had indeed developed specialized systems designed to influence Ghidorah's behavior. Massive energy transmitters. Neural resonance arrays. Quantum synchronization devices operating according to principles unfamiliar to galactic science. Unfortunately, the data revealed something else. The systems were failing. Control signals generated inconsistent responses. Synchronization rates continued declining. Several internal reports openly questioned whether true control had ever existed in the first place. The technology influenced Ghidorah. It did not command him. That distinction mattered enormously. The infiltrators copied everything. Technical schematics, research archives, experimental results, behavioral analyses. Then they vanished before the Xiliens realized anything had happened. Days later, the information arrived on Coruscant. Sidious reviewed every file personally. The findings fascinated him. The Xiliens had approached Ghidorah as engineers, as scientists, as technicians attempting to manage a dangerous machine. Their mistake was obvious. King Ghidorah was not a machine. It was a will. A living force driven by instincts powerful enough to reshape galaxies. Technology alone would never dominate such a creature. But perhaps the dark side could. The idea grew rapidly within Sidious's mind. Ancient Sith texts described rituals capable of influencing monstrous entities. Dark side nexuses amplified control over lesser beings. Certain force techniques allowed domination of minds, emotions, and even biological impulses. No Sith had ever attempted such methods on a creature like Ghidorah. That only made the challenge more appealing. For the first time, a genuine plan began taking shape. Not merely to stop the monster. Not merely to redirect it. To own it. Imagine the possibilities. A creature capable of destroying fleets serving the future empire. Entire sectors conquered through terror alone. Resistance crushed before battles even began. The Death Star itself would become almost unnecessary. Sidious could already envision it. Golden lightning illuminating imperial banners. Worlds surrendering without resistance. Absolute power. Absolute fear. Absolute victory. Yet even as these ambitions grew, events elsewhere were moving toward catastrophe. King Ghidorah had finally reached the destination, drawing its attention across the stars. The forgotten Sith world lay abandoned by civilization for centuries. Ancient temples crumbled beneath storms. Dark side energies saturated the landscape. The planet existed as a wound within the Force, carrying echoes of countless atrocities committed long ago. Most beings found the world unbearable. Ghidorah found it fascinating. The Titan descended through crimson clouds toward ancient ruins stretching across entire continents. Lightning erupted around him as his immense form settled upon the surface. Then something remarkable happened. The dark side responded. Ancient energies dormant for generations stirred awake. Forgotten temples glowed faintly. Buried artifacts resonated. Storm systems intensified. The planet recognized power. And power recognized the planet. Across the galaxy, Force-sensitive beings experienced the consequences immediately. Yoda sensed it. Dooku sensed it. Anakin sensed it. Sidious sensed it most strongly of all. The connection lasted only moments. But it was enough. Enough to understand that Ghidorah's relationship with the Force was changing. Enough to realize the creature was becoming something even more dangerous. And enough to convince the Dark Lord that time was running out. If he intended to seize control, he would need to act soon. Because every day that passed made King Ghidorah stronger, stranger, and less predictable. The Emperor's gambit had begun. What Sidious did not yet realize was that he was not the only one preparing to claim the monster. The Xiliens wanted control. The Sith wanted control. Even elements within the Separatists were beginning to formulate their own plans. Soon, the struggle for Ghidorah would become as important as the Clone Wars themselves. And when multiple powers attempted to dominate a force that answered to none of them, the results would shake the galaxy to its foundations. The illusion ended above Coruscant. For months the Xiliens had hidden behind carefully crafted diplomacy, presenting themselves as enlightened explorers seeking peaceful cooperation with the civilizations of the Star Wars galaxy. They had attended Republic hearings, negotiated with Separatist representatives, exchanged scientific knowledge with respected institutions, and offered technological assistance to worlds damaged by the Clone Wars. Their ambassadors spoke of prosperity, mutual advancement, and the promise of a future free from endless conflict. To many senators exhausted by years of war, the newcomers represented hope. To countless citizens, they seemed proof that the galaxy's future might contain more than perpetual bloodshed. Yet beneath that carefully constructed image lay a far darker ambition. Everything the Xiliens had done since arriving in the galaxy had served a single purpose: preparation. Every diplomatic mission had mapped hyperspace routes. Every scientific exchange had gathered intelligence. Every trade agreement had identified strategic vulnerabilities. While the Republic and Confederacy continued tearing each other apart, the Xiliens had quietly studied both sides, learning their strengths, weaknesses, and political divisions. They had watched a galaxy already exhausted by war and concluded that conquest would be easier than coexistence. Now, at last, the deception had run its course. The time for masks had ended. The time for invasion had begun. The first warning arrived not through military channels but through civilian communications. Long-range monitoring stations positioned near the core began detecting enormous energy signatures moving toward Coruscant from multiple directions simultaneously. At first, analysts believed the readings were sensor malfunctions. The numbers exceeded anything previously recorded. Entire departments spent precious minutes recalibrating equipment before the horrifying truth became impossible to ignore. The readings were real. Something vast was approaching. Within hours, emergency alerts spread throughout the Republic. Fleet commanders received orders to reinforce defensive positions around the capital. Planetary security forces entered a heightened state of readiness. Senate officials suspended normal proceedings as intelligence reports poured into the government district. Then the invasion fleet emerged from hyperspace. The sight stunned even veteran military observers. Thousands of Xilien vessels materialized throughout the Coruscant system in perfect formation. Their ships occupied strategic positions with terrifying precision, appearing not as scattered attackers but as an executioner's blade descending toward its target. Vast carrier platforms, heavy assault cruisers, and specialized command vessels filled the darkness above the capital world. The invasion force dwarfed anything the Republic had anticipated. Yet even that armada proved insignificant compared to what followed. King Ghidorah arrived moments later. The Dragon King emerged from hyperspace surrounded by storms of golden energy that illuminated entire sectors of space. 3 colossal heads surveyed the capital world beneath him. Massive wings stretched across the darkness like living continents. Lightning erupted continuously from his scales, creating a halo of destruction visible from the planet's surface. Billions watched the creature appear above their world. Entire districts fell silent. For a brief moment, fear united Coruscant more completely than any government ever had. The nightmare had reached the capital. Across the Jedi Temple, alarms echoed through ancient halls. Masters rushed toward command centers overlooking the cityscape. Through the Force, they felt a disturbance unlike anything experienced during the Clone Wars. It was not merely the presence of immense physical power. It was something deeper, something profoundly wrong. The Xiliens had never come seeking peace. They had come seeking submission. Master Yoda sensed the truth immediately. The invasion had been planned from the beginning. Everything else had merely been preparation. Meanwhile, within the Senate district, Chancellor Palpatine observed events unfolding with carefully controlled concern. Publicly, he appeared shocked by the betrayal. Privately, Darth Sidious recognized the scale of the threat facing him. The Xiliens were no longer attempting to influence galactic politics. They intended to replace them entirely. That could not be allowed. Not because he cared about the Republic. Because he intended to rule it himself. The first attack came without warning. Massive Xilien weapons platforms opened fire against Coruscant's orbital defense network. Beams of concentrated energy ripped through defensive satellites. Republic warships stationed near the capital scrambled to respond, but the assault struck with overwhelming speed. Entire defensive formations vanished before commanders fully understood what was happening. Then the Xiliens revealed the true centerpiece of their strategy. Their primary target was not the Senate, not the Jedi Temple, not the military shipyards. It was Coruscant's planetary shield. For generations, the immense shield network protecting the capital had been considered virtually impregnable. Designed to withstand fleet bombardments and large-scale invasions, it represented one of the most sophisticated defensive systems in known space. Republic leaders had long viewed it as the ultimate safeguard against catastrophe. The Xiliens disagreed. Hidden among their invasion fleet were specialized resonance weapons developed specifically for this purpose. Rather than attempting to overpower the shield through brute force, they targeted its operating frequencies. Strange waves of energy spread across the defensive barrier. Sections of the shield began flickering. Stability fluctuations appeared throughout the network. Engineers struggled desperately to compensate. Then King Ghidorah attacked. All three heads unleashed gravity beams simultaneously. Golden destruction slammed into the destabilized shield with unimaginable force. The entire system shook. From the surface, citizens watched the sky itself transform. Vast ripples spread across the protective barrier. Lightning-like fractures raced through its structure. Entire sections began collapsing inward under impossible pressure. The Dragon King struck again. And again. And again. Each attack widened the damage. Each blast pushed the shield closer to failure. Republic fleets launched counterattacks with everything available. Venator-class star destroyers poured turbolaser fire into the advancing monster. Fighter squadrons swarmed around him. Defensive batteries unleashed continuous bombardments. None of it mattered. Ghidorah continued forward. The Xilian fleet maintained relentless pressure. The shield weakened. Then came the final strike. With a roar that echoed across the heavens, King Ghidorah unleashed the full fury of his power against the fractured barrier. 3 gravity beams converged upon the same point. Energy readings surged beyond measurable limits. The damaged shield endured for several agonizing seconds. Then it shattered. The destruction of Coruscant's shield became visible across the entire planet. A vast wave of light erupted through the atmosphere. Fragments of collapsing energy cascaded across the sky like burning auroras. Entire districts watched the protective barrier disintegrate above them. For the first time in generations, the capital world stood completely exposed. Panic erupted instantly. Emergency sirens filled the air. Traffic systems collapsed beneath overwhelming demand. Refugee transports launched from countless spaceports. Government agencies struggled to maintain order as fear spread through trillions of citizens. The impossible had happened. Coruscant was vulnerable. The Xiliens had proven it. Yet the consequences extended far beyond the capital. Throughout the galaxy, both Republic and Separatist worlds witnessed the destruction through holonet broadcasts. Entire populations watched as the seat of galactic civilizations suffered a humiliation no enemy had ever achieved. Military leaders on both sides reached the same terrifying conclusion. If Coruscant could be attacked, nowhere was safe. If the shield protecting the capital could fall, every world stood vulnerable. The Clone Wars suddenly seemed smaller. The endless conflict between Republic and Separatists no longer represented the galaxy's greatest threat. The Xiliens did. Count Dooku understood it immediately. So did the Jedi Council. So did countless admirals, governors, senators, and military commanders across both factions. The war they had spent years fighting no longer mattered as much as the one now unfolding. A new enemy had arrived. An enemy that threatened everyone equally. As burning debris drifted through Coruscant's orbit and the shattered remnants of the planetary shield scattered across the stars, the old divisions that had defined the Clone Wars began to crack. Fear spread through both sides of the conflict. Suspicion gave way to survival. Long-standing rivalries suddenly appeared insignificant compared to the nightmare descending upon the core worlds. The Xiliens had achieved a devastating victory. But in doing so, they had also accomplished something neither they nor their monster king fully understood. For the first time since the Clone Wars began, the galaxy had found a threat capable of uniting its enemies. And that realization would shape everything that followed. The galaxy had spent years tearing itself apart. Republic fleets hunted Separatist armadas across thousands of systems. Clone troopers fought and died on distant battlefields they barely understood. Battle droids marched endlessly into wars orchestrated by leaders who viewed casualties as numbers on strategic reports. Jedi generals struggled to preserve peace while commanding armies built for conflict. Mandalorian clans remained divided between ancient rivalries and modern ambitions. Smugglers, pirates, and criminal syndicates thrived amid the chaos, enriching themselves while governments bled resources and lives. Hidden behind it all, Sith lords manipulated events from the shadows, ensuring that every victory carried the seeds of future disaster. The Clone Wars had become the defining conflict of an entire generation. Then King Ghidorah came. Everything changed. Across the core worlds, panic spread faster than any military could contain. The destruction of Coruscant's planetary shield had shattered more than a defensive network. It had shattered confidence. For centuries, the citizens of the Republic had viewed Coruscant as untouchable. It was the heart of galactic civilization, protected by immense fleets, powerful defenses, and the political authority of trillions. Now the impossible had happened. The shield had fallen, and the monster responsible was still alive. Every new intelligence report painted an increasingly horrifying picture. Ghidorah was not retreating after his victory. He was advancing. The colossal three-headed titan continued moving deeper toward the heart of galactic civilization, accompanied by expanding Xilian fleets that appeared determined to crush any resistance before it could fully organize. Entire sectors were collapsing before the advance. Refugee convoys stretched across hyperspace routes in numbers unseen since the ancient Sith Wars. Merchant fleets abandoned profitable trade lanes to transport civilians fleeing threatened systems. Core world governors desperately requested military assistance while simultaneously preparing evacuation plans for populations numbering in the billions. The galaxy was running out of time. For the first time since the Clone Wars began, both sides understood a terrifying truth. Winning the war no longer mattered. Surviving did. The first signs of the coming alliance emerged not within Grand Senate chambers or military headquarters, but on the front lines where soldiers faced reality without the protection of politics. Clone commanders operating near the Perlemian trade route began encountering separatist forces engaged in desperate battles against Xiliens scouting fleets. Neither side had enough strength to survive independently. Initial encounters nearly resulted in firefights between Republic and Separatist units before the arrival of Ghidorah's vanguard forced an uncomfortable decision. Fight each other and die, or fight together and live. Again and again, the same choice repeated itself throughout the galaxy. On devastated colony worlds, clone troopers found themselves defending refugee centers alongside battle droids. Jedi-led relief operations received unexpected support from Separatist medical vessels. Former enemies exchanged targeting data during desperate fleet engagements. Officers who had spent years trying to destroy one another suddenly discovered they worked surprisingly well together when faced with extinction. The alliance was not born from trust. It was born from necessity. Above the industrial world of Brental, one of the first major coalition battles unfolded. A Xilian attack force emerged from hyperspace expecting to encounter divided defenders. Instead, they found something entirely unexpected. Republic Venator-class Star Destroyers formed battle lines beside Separatist Providence-class carriers. Clone ARC 170 squadrons launched simultaneously with Separatist droid fighters. For several tense moments, both sides remained convinced betrayal was inevitable. Then the Xiliens attacked. All doubts vanished beneath incoming fire. The battle raged for hours amid blazing debris fields and burning warships. Clone pilots covered droid formations. Separatist vessels intercepted attacks targeting Republic cruisers. Officers exchanged battlefield intelligence in real time despite years of hostility. By the time the Xilian force finally retreated, thousands were dead, but an impossible victory had been achieved. The coalition had worked. Word spread rapidly. Across the galaxy, military commanders began replicating the strategy. The Jedi Order quickly found itself at the center of these efforts. Though many Jedi remained deeply uncomfortable cooperating with Separatist forces, the growing threat left little room for ideological purity. Systems continued falling. Refugees continued dying. Entire populations depended upon rapid action. Master Obi-Wan Kenobi became one of the strongest advocates for practical cooperation. Having witnessed firsthand the scale of destruction unleashed by Ghidorah, he understood that old grievances could wait until survival was secured. Even Anakin Skywalker, whose hatred for many Separatist leaders remained intense, recognized the necessity of unity against a threat capable of annihilating entire planets. Yet not all cooperation occurred openly. Far from public attention, darker forces were also becoming involved. Count Dooku had spent years commanding the Separatist movement while secretly serving Darth Sidious. He understood better than almost anyone the danger posed by the Xiliens. Unlike the Republic, Dooku possessed access to intelligence networks stretching deep into regions beyond known space. The reports reaching him painted a disturbing picture. The Xiliens were preparing something massive, something capable of ending the war permanently, and not in favor of either faction. Reluctantly, Dooku began deploying assets he normally reserved for covert Sith operations. Dark side operatives infiltrated Xilien supply networks. Sith spies gathered intelligence behind enemy lines. Secret agents trained in assassination and sabotage targeted key invasion infrastructure. These operatives rarely revealed their true loyalties, instead appearing as mercenaries, smugglers, or independent contractors. The irony was almost absurd. Jedi and Sith agents sometimes found themselves fighting on the same side without realizing it. On one devastated frontier world, a Jedi reconnaissance team narrowly escaped destruction thanks to information provided by an anonymous operative later identified as a Sith intelligence asset. Elsewhere, dark side infiltrators survived Xilien ambushes because clone rescue teams responded without knowing who they were saving. The war against Ghidorah was creating alliances nobody could have imagined. Meanwhile, Mandalorian involvement continued growing. The warrior clans had suffered heavily during the monster's advance. Several Mandalorian colonies located along strategic hyperspace corridors had already been devastated. Entire generations of warriors had died defending worlds consumed by Xilien assaults. For proud cultures built upon strength and honor, retreat was unacceptable. Mandalore answered with war. Thousands of warriors rallied beneath clan banners. Ancient ships emerged from hidden shipyards. Veteran commanders united rival houses beneath a shared purpose. While political disagreements remained unresolved, everyone agreed on one thing. Ghidorah had to die. Mandalorian forces soon became some of the coalition's most effective combatants. Their aggressive tactics allowed them to strike vulnerable Xilien positions before withdrawing rapidly. Beskar armored commandos conducted boarding actions against enemy vessels. Elite warriors eliminated targets considered too dangerous for conventional forces. Their reputations spread quickly. Even hardened clone veterans developed newfound respect for warriors they had once viewed with suspicion. Smugglers and criminal syndicates also played crucial roles. Official military planners rarely admitted it publicly, but without criminal networks the coalition might have collapsed. Smuggling routes bypassed regions rendered inaccessible by fighting. Black market contacts provided intelligence unavailable through conventional channels. Pirate captains transported refugees when government vessels lacked capacity. The Hutts contributed resources for reasons entirely their own. Profit remained important. Survival mattered more. Every destroyed world represented lost wealth. Every dead civilization represented vanished opportunities. Protecting the galaxy had become good business. As the coalition expanded, Ghidorah continued advancing. That remained the greatest challenge. No matter how many victories coalition forces achieved against Xilien fleets, the Dragon King itself remained nearly unstoppable. Entire battle groups vanished attempting direct confrontation. Planetary defenses collapsed beneath gravity beams powerful enough to shatter mountains. Massive storms followed the monster wherever it traveled, disrupting communications and crippling military responses. Every success felt temporary. Every victory carried new losses. The pressure mounted relentlessly. Then came the fall of Alsakan. One of the most important core-adjacent systems in the Republic, Alsakan possessed formidable defenses and significant military infrastructure. Coalition planners believed it could delay Ghidorah's advance long enough to strengthen defenses around the core worlds. They were wrong. The battle lasted less than a day. Thousands of ships participated. Republic cruisers fought beside Separatist warships. Mandalorian squadrons launched repeated attacks. Jedi coordinated evacuations while clone legions defended strategic positions. Even covert Sith operatives participated in desperate efforts to slow the monster. None of it mattered. Ghidorah tore through the defense network like a force of nature. By the time evacuation efforts concluded, Alsakan was burning. The message was unmistakable. The core worlds were next. Fear spread throughout the coalition. Not fear of defeat. Fear that even unity might not be enough. Yet, if morale faltered, determination strengthened. Military leaders understood there would be no second chance. Every available resource was redirected toward final defensive preparations. Republic shipyards accelerated production. Separatist factories shifted entirely toward wartime output. Mandalorians committed nearly every major clan to the coming struggle. Even Sith agents intensified their efforts. Dooku's operatives infiltrated Xilien communications. Sabotage missions increased. Intelligence gathering became relentless. Though few realized it, some of the most valuable information reaching Coalition command originated from individuals serving the dark side. It was an alliance built upon contradictions. Jedi and Sith, clones and battle droids, Mandalorians and Republic officers, smugglers and senators, heroes and criminals, all standing together because the alternative was annihilation. As Ghidorah crossed the final approaches toward the core worlds, the largest military coalition in galactic history assembled to meet him. Fleets gathered around critical systems. Defense networks activated. Ground forces prepared for invasions expected to arrive at any moment. Nobody trusted everyone around them. Old grudges remained. Old wars remained unresolved. Yet for one brief moment, the divisions that had defined an era became secondary to survival itself. The galaxy had finally united. Not because it wanted to, because it had no choice. And as the Dragon King advanced toward the heart of civilization, every being in the coalition understood the same terrifying truth. The next battle would decide the fate of trillions. The end began above Coruscant. For thousands of years, the galactic capital had stood as the beating heart of civilization. Trillions lived within its endless cityscape. Countless governments, corporations, institutions, and military organizations traced their authority back to the shining ecumenopolis that stretched across an entire world. Coruscant represented more than political power. It represented continuity, stability, the belief that no matter how violent the galaxy became, there would always remain a center capable of enduring the storm. Now that belief faced its greatest test. The warning arrived shortly after dawn on the upper levels of the planet. Deep space monitoring stations detected a series of hyperspace distortions unlike anything previously recorded. Massive gravitational fluctuations rippled through the core worlds. Long-range scanners began failing as exotic energy signatures flooded entire sectors. Communications traffic surged across military channels as commanders attempted to verify incoming reports. Then the enemy appeared. Across the darkness beyond Coruscant, hundreds of hyperspace ruptures tore open simultaneously. Xiliens warships emerged in numbers that eclipsed every previous invasion force. Vast formations stretched across space like metallic continents, their weapons already powering for battle. Carrier groups, assault platforms, command vessels, and support fleets flooded into the system with terrifying precision. But even those enormous armadas were not what drew the attention of every observer. Behind them came something far worse. Something vast enough to dwarf entire formations of warships. King Ghidorah had arrived. The Dragon King emerged from hyperspace surrounded by crackling storms that illuminated the void like artificial suns. Golden scales reflected the light of Coruscant's star. 3 massive necks stretched outward across impossible distances while wings larger than entire cities unfolded against the darkness. Every movement generated waves of electromagnetic interference that disrupted sensors throughout the system. The monster looked less like a living creature and more like a force of nature given physical form. Silence spread through command centers as officers stared at incoming visual feeds. Even veteran soldiers who had survived years of Clone Wars combat found themselves unable to speak. The apocalypse had reached Coruscant. Within moments, coalition defenses activated. The largest military force ever assembled in galactic history surged forward to meet the threat. Thousands upon thousands of warships moved into pre-planned formations surrounding the capital. Republic Venator-class Star Destroyers formed massive defensive lines. Separatist battleships deployed alongside vessels they had spent years trying to destroy. Mandalorian cruisers accelerated into attack positions while smuggler flotillas maneuvered through gaps too dangerous for conventional fleets. Clone fighter wings launched in overwhelming numbers. Vulture droids launched beside them. For the first time in the Clone Wars, former enemies entered battle not against one another, but shoulder to shoulder. Above Coruscant, the alliance of necessity made its stand. The first exchange transformed space into chaos. Xiliens weapons opened fire across millions of kilometers. Energy beams lanced through the darkness with devastating precision. Coalition vessels responded instantly. Turbolasers illuminated space. Missile salvos filled entire sectors. Fighter formations accelerated toward incoming enemy fleets. The battle erupted on a scale few beings could truly comprehend. Entire squadrons vanished within seconds. Warships exploded in expanding spheres of plasma. Debris fields formed and disappeared beneath continuous bombardment. Yet despite the scale of destruction, all attention eventually returned to a single target: King Ghidorah. Because wherever the Dragon King moved, death followed. The monster surged directly into the heart of the defensive network. Gravity beams erupted from all three heads simultaneously. Golden energy crossed space and struck a formation of Republic cruisers. The vessels ceased to exist almost instantly. Armor, shielding, and internal structures vaporized beneath unimaginable power. Nearby ships suffered similar fates as the beams swept across the battlefield. Ghidorah continued advancing. Nothing seemed capable of slowing him. Coalition commanders unleashed everything available. Turbolaser batteries concentrated fire. Ion cannons discharged. Missiles detonated across the monster's scales. Separatist super-heavy weapons joined the assault. The attacks would have annihilated entire fleets. Ghidorah barely noticed. Explosions covered his enormous body. Flames spread across his wings. Yet when the smoke cleared, the Dragon King remained alive. Still advancing. Still unstoppable. Panic threatened to spread through coalition forces. Then the Jedi entered the battle. Hundreds of Jedi Knights and Masters had been deployed across key command vessels throughout the defense network. Through the Force, they could sense the unimaginable devastation approaching Coruscant. Entire futures disappeared each moment Ghidorah advanced. Billions of lives hung in the balance. Master Yoda stood aboard a Republic command ship overlooking the battle. Nearby, Obi-Wan Kenobi coordinated fleet operations. Anakin Skywalker led strike formations against advancing Xilien warships. Every Jedi present understood the same truth. The monster had to be stopped before reaching the planet. The Force itself seemed to tremble around Ghidorah. Unlike ordinary creatures, the Dragon King generated disturbances so immense they echoed across the Force like planetary catastrophes. Jedi attempting to perceive his future found only storms, destruction, and endless death. Even so, they refused to retreat. Across the battlefield, Jedi pilots began coordinating attacks impossible for conventional forces to execute. Guided by precognition, fighter squadrons exploited weaknesses within Xilien formations. Capital ships maneuvered according to Jedi calculations. Defensive lines held longer than expected. Yet Ghidorah continued moving. Closer, closer, ever closer to Coruscant. Meanwhile, Count Dooku committed the final reserves of the Separatist military. Entire droid fleets entered combat despite catastrophic casualty projections. Hidden Sith intelligence assets sabotaged Xilien command structures behind enemy lines. Operatives who had spent years serving the dark side now fought desperately to preserve a galaxy they had helped destabilize. For a brief moment, Sith and Jedi pursued the same objective. Not peace. Not victory. Survival. The battle intensified. Hours passed. Losses mounted. The coalition fought with a determination born from desperation. Clone troopers aboard boarding craft launched attacks against Xilien carriers. Mandalorian commandos struck enemy support vessels. Smugglers used unconventional routes to evacuate damaged ships and rescue survivors. Every faction contributed. Every faction bled. Every faction sacrificed. Still, Ghidorah advanced. Eventually the Dragon King breached the final outer defense perimeter surrounding Coruscant. The sight sent shockwaves through Coalition command. If the monster reached orbit, the consequences would be unimaginable. 3 gravity beams could scour entire continents. Planetary infrastructure would collapse. Trillions could die. The final phase of the battle began. Anakin Skywalker volunteered for the most dangerous operation of the war. Using intelligence gathered from captured Xilien technology and information stolen by Sith infiltrators, Coalition scientists had identified a possible weakness. The control systems originally designed to influence Ghidorah still existed. Though heavily modified and partially damaged during previous conflicts, traces remained embedded within Xilien command architecture. Destroying the network might not kill Ghidorah, but it could sever the remaining restraints influencing his behavior. The plan was madness. Yet no alternatives remained. A combined strike force formed immediately. Clone commandos, Mandalorian veterans, Separatist specialists, Jedi Knights, even covert Sith operatives. Together they launched an assault against the primary Xilien command vessel directing the invasion. The operation became one of the most brutal engagements of the entire war. Fighting erupted throughout the massive flagship. Corridors became battlegrounds. Compartments exploded under sustained combat. Casualties mounted as defenders fought desperately to preserve control of their greatest weapon. But eventually the strike force succeeded. The command network fell. The control systems shattered. And everything changed. Across the battlefield, Ghidorah suddenly stopped. For several terrifying seconds, the Dragon King remained motionless. The galaxy held its breath. Then the monster turned. Not toward Coruscant. Toward the Xilien fleet. The creatures who had manipulated him for so long had finally lost control. What followed was slaughter. Pure, uncontrollable slaughter. Ghidorah unleashed his fury against the invaders themselves. Gravity beams tore through Xilien formations. Capital ships exploded by the hundreds. Entire fleets disintegrated beneath attacks more devastating than anything the Coalition had endured. The battlefield descended into chaos. Xilien commanders attempted to regain control. They failed. Their greatest weapon had become their greatest enemy. Coalition forces immediately exploited the opportunity. Republic fleets surged forward. Separatist warships followed. Mandalorian squadrons launched coordinated strikes. Every surviving force concentrated fire upon both the collapsing invasion fleet and the wounded Dragon King. The final confrontation had begun. For nearly an hour, the battle raged across the skies above Coruscant. Ghidorah fought like a god of destruction unleashed. Dozens of ships died with every passing minute. Entire formations vanished beneath gravity beams. Yet the monster was no longer facing a divided galaxy. He faced an entire civilization fighting as one. Gradually, damage accumulated. Golden scales shattered. Massive wounds appeared across ancient flesh. One wing collapsed beneath sustained bombardment. The Dragon King's movement slowed. For the first time since arriving in the galaxy, King Ghidorah appeared vulnerable. The Coalition pressed the attack. Everything depended upon the next few moments. Because either the monster would finally fall, or Coruscant would burn. The fate of trillions hung in the balance as the greatest battle in galactic history reached its final, decisive climax. The war ended, but the legend began. In the weeks following the Battle of Coruscant, the galaxy struggled to comprehend what it had survived. Historians would eventually call it the Xilien Crisis. Military scholars would label it the Ghidorah War. Politicians would reduce it to reports, treaties, and casualty figures. Yet for the ordinary beings who had witnessed the destruction firsthand, no title ever truly captured the reality of what had happened. Entire fleets had vanished in moments. Worlds had been scarred. The Clone Wars itself had nearly become irrelevant beneath the shadow of a threat so vast that even the Republic and the Confederacy had been forced to stand together or perish together. For the first time since the Clone Wars began, the galaxy paused. Not because peace had arrived, but because everyone needed to breathe. Across Coruscant, reconstruction efforts continued day and night. Thousands of damaged structures were repaired. Emergency shelters gradually emptied as displaced citizens returned home. The great shipyards orbiting the capital worked without rest, replacing vessels lost during the largest battle in recorded galactic history. Memorials appeared throughout the city world. Some honored fallen Jedi. Others honored clone troopers, naval officers, civilian volunteers, smugglers, Mandalorians, and even former Separatist soldiers who had died defending a government they normally opposed. The names engraved upon those monuments revealed a truth few politicians wished to discuss. When extinction had threatened everyone equally, allegiance had mattered far less than courage. Within the Jedi Temple, the Council faced difficult questions. For years, the Jedi had believed they understood the galaxy's greatest dangers. The Sith represented the ultimate enemy. The dark side represented the greatest corruption. The Clone Wars represented the greatest crisis of the age. King Ghidorah had shattered those assumptions. Yoda spent many hours meditating upon the lessons of the conflict. Through the Force, he had witnessed entire futures disappear beneath Ghidorah's advance. He had sensed fear on a scale rarely experienced even during war. Yet he had also sensed something else. Cooperation. Unity. The Force had revealed an uncomfortable truth. The Jedi had become so focused on familiar threats that they had forgotten how vast the galaxy truly was. Ancient Sith, dark side cults, criminal syndicates, and political corruption remained dangerous. Yet beyond known space existed mysteries and dangers that cared nothing for Jedi philosophy or Sith ambition. The Force did not belong solely to the struggles between light and dark. It flowed through a universe far larger than either side had ever imagined. Obi-Wan Kenobi reached similar conclusions. Throughout the conflict, he had witnessed impossible alliances form under desperate circumstances. He had fought alongside individuals who, only weeks earlier, would have been considered enemies of the Republic. Mandalorian warriors had defended Republic convoys. Separatist fleets had protected civilian evacuation routes. Smugglers had become heroes. The experience left a lasting impression. The galaxy was more complicated than war allowed people to believe. Anakin Skywalker, however, took different lessons from the conflict. He remembered how slowly governments reacted while entire systems burned. He remembered political debates that continued even as Ghidorah annihilated fleets. Most importantly, he remembered how effective decisive action had been during the crisis. The experience reinforced beliefs he already possessed. Strong leadership saved lives. Indecision cost lives. Those thoughts settled deep within him, becoming another small influence that would shape his future in ways nobody yet understood. Meanwhile, Count Dooku returned to Separatist space carrying his own conclusions. The Sith Lord had spent years manipulating galactic conflict for political advantage. Yet even he found himself reflecting upon what the Xiliens invasion had revealed. The Republic and Confederacy remained enemies. Their ideological differences remained unresolved. Yet when confronted by a truly existential threat, those differences had suddenly seemed insignificant. Dooku would never admit it publicly, but part of him wondered whether the galaxy's endless divisions ultimately served anyone at all. The thought lingered, even if it changed nothing. Far more disturbed was Darth Sidious. From his hidden chambers, the future Emperor analyzed every report recovered from the war. He studied Xilien technology. He examined battle recordings of Ghidorah. He reviewed intelligence gathered during the invasion. Most importantly, he analyzed the coalition itself. What troubled him was not the monster. Ghidorah was gone. The Xiliens were defeated. Those problems had been solved. What concerned Sidious was the realization that, under the right circumstances, the galaxy could unite. His entire grand design depended upon division. Distrust. The Clone Wars existed because he manipulated both sides into conflict. The Xilien War had briefly broken that cycle. For a few terrifying weeks, billions stopped viewing each other as enemies. They focused instead on survival. Sidious recognized the danger immediately. If that mentality spread, his plans could face unexpected complications. The galaxy needed to return to war. It needed to return to division. It needed to forget what unity had accomplished. And so, quietly and carefully, the machinery of conflict resumed operation. Yet some memories proved difficult to erase. Across the mid-rim and outer rim, stories spread faster than official reports. Pilots told tales of seeing Ghidorah consume entire squadrons in storms of golden lightning. Refugees shared stories about Jedi and Separatists working together. Smugglers exaggerated battles until they sounded like myths. Children listened with wide eyes as veterans described the day 3 golden heads appeared above the stars. The stories changed with each retelling. Details became exaggerated. Events became larger than life. But one thing remained constant. King Ghidorah became a legend. On dozens of worlds, artists created paintings depicting the Dragon King descending from the heavens. Writers composed stories inspired by the invasion. Musicians wrote songs commemorating fallen heroes. Religious groups interpreted the monster through their own beliefs, viewing him as everything from divine punishment to cosmic warning. The monster who nearly destroyed the galaxy gradually transformed into something stranger. A symbol, not merely of destruction, of perspective. People remembered how small their conflicts had seemed when Ghidorah appeared. Entire generations would grow up hearing those stories. And those stories would shape them. Elsewhere, remnants of the Xiliens civilization slowly disappeared from galactic affairs. A handful of survivors were captured. Others vanished into deep space. Their bases were dismantled. Their fleets destroyed. Yet fragments of their technology remained scattered throughout the galaxy. Scientists eagerly studied recovered systems. Engineers attempted to understand Xilien energy manipulation. Military researchers explored defensive technologies developed during the war. The discoveries accelerated technological advancement across multiple sectors. Ironically, the invaders left behind innovations that would benefit the civilization they had attempted to conquer. History often carried such contradictions. Among the Mandalorians, the war became part of their cultural identity. Veterans spoke proudly about fighting beside unlikely allies against an enemy that respected neither honor nor strength. New stories entered Mandalorian tradition. Songs were written about battles fought against impossible odds. Many clans viewed the conflict as proof that true warriors were defined not by whom they fought, but by what they were willing to defend. Even generations later, Mandalorian children would hear tales of the Golden Dragon and the warriors who stood against him. Perhaps the most important legacy emerged within the ordinary population. The people who had no lightsabers, no armies, no political influence, just lives. Before the invasion, many citizens viewed the Clone Wars through the lens of propaganda. Republic broadcasts blamed the Separatists. Separatist media blamed the Republic. Every side promoted its own version of reality. Then Ghidorah arrived. Suddenly, survival mattered more than politics. People saw former enemies helping one another. They witnessed cooperation succeeding where division had failed. Many never forgot that lesson. Years later, long after the war ended, those memories would continue influencing countless decisions across the galaxy. Not enough to stop future conflicts, but enough to remind people that another path existed. As months passed, the Clone Wars resumed their relentless march toward destiny. Battles continued. Worlds changed hands. Political schemes multiplied. To outside observers, it almost appeared as though nothing had changed. Yet beneath the surface, everything had. The Jedi viewed the galaxy differently. The Sith viewed it differently. The Republic and Confederacy viewed it differently. Even ordinary citizens viewed it differently. They had looked beyond their familiar struggles and seen something greater, something older, something more terrifying. And they had survived. In the years that followed, countless theories emerged regarding King Ghidorah himself. Scholars debated his origins. Scientists argued over his biology. Philosophers discussed what his existence implied about the wider universe. No consensus was ever reached. Perhaps that was fitting. Some mysteries were never meant to be solved. As for the battlefield above Coruscant, it eventually became a place of remembrance. Salvage operations recovered much of the wreckage, but portions were deliberately left untouched. Memorial stations were constructed among the remains. Visitors traveled from across the galaxy to witness the site where extinction had nearly arrived. There they could see fragments of Republic cruisers, Separatist warships, Mandalorian vessels, Xilien wreckage, all drifting together in silent testimony. A reminder that survival had been achieved not through ideology or power, but through cooperation. And so the legend endured. The legend of the Golden Dragon, the monster who descended from beyond the stars, the invaders who believed they could control him, the galaxy that nearly fell, and the unlikely alliance that refused to surrender. Long after the Clone Wars ended, long after empires rose and fell, beings would still tell stories about those events. Some would embellish them. Some would doubt them. Some would treat them as myth. Yet the truth remained. For one brief chapter in galactic history, an external threat unlike anything before or since forced the entire galaxy to confront itself. And in doing so, it taught a lesson that neither Jedi nor Sith, Republic nor Separatist, could ever fully ignore. The greatest dangers were not always found within the galaxy. Sometimes they came from beyond the stars. And when they did, survival depended on remembering that every civilization, every faction, and every world ultimately shared the same sky. History would remember the Xilien War as a conflict measured in casualties, destroyed fleets, and shattered worlds. Military academies would study the battles. Politicians would debate the decisions that led to victory. Historians would fill entire archives attempting to explain how the galaxy survived its greatest external threat. Yet the true legacy of the war was never found in statistics or official records. It was found in the lesson left behind. For generations, the galaxy had been divided by ideology, ambition, fear, and pride. The Republic and Separatists believed their struggle would determine the future of civilization. The Jedi and Sith believed their ancient conflict stood at the center of destiny itself. Countless worlds saw only their own problems, their own enemies, and their own ambitions. Then something arrived from beyond the stars. The Xiliens came seeking conquest, armed with a weapon powerful enough to challenge entire civilizations. King Ghidorah was not a Sith Lord, a warlord, or a political rival. He was something far older and far more terrifying, a living catastrophe capable of reducing planets, fleets, and governments to dust. Against such a threat, old rivalries suddenly seemed insignificant. For one brief moment in history, enemies stood together. Jedi fought beside Separatists. Clone troopers defended worlds they had once been ordered to conquer. Mandalorians, smugglers, senators, soldiers, and even agents of darkness found themselves united by a single purpose: survival. The alliance would not last forever. The Clone Wars would continue. The schemes of Darth Sidious would continue. The path toward the rise of the Empire remained unchanged. Yet the memory endured. Across the galaxy, survivors told stories of the Golden Dragon. They spoke of impossible battles, unlikely heroes, and the day civilizations stood on the edge of extinction. Some remembered the fear. Others remembered the courage. But all remembered the lesson. The galaxy was strongest when it stood together. Perhaps that lesson would be forgotten by some. Perhaps future wars would bury it beneath fresh hatred and new ambitions. Yet legends have a way of surviving long after empires fall. And somewhere among the stars, in the memories of those who lived through the darkness, the legend of King Ghidorah remained. A warning, a mystery, and a reminder that even in a galaxy consumed by war, unity could still become the greatest weapon of all.
The multiverse doesn't end here. New invasions, new empires, and new worlds collide daily. If you enjoy deep cinematic what-if scenarios like this, subscribe and join Multiverse Galaxy If.